3 simple ways to stop anxiety. Now, did you know that taking a deep breath when you feel anxious might actually be making your anxiety worse? I know this sounds completely backwards, especially when everyone from your doctor to your yoga instructor has told you to just breathe deeply when you feel stressed. But here is the thing that most people do not understand about anxiety, especially as we get older. If you have been feeling more anxious lately, experiencing that familiar tightness in your chest, or finding yourself worrying about things that never bothered you before, you are definitely not alone. What many people do not realize is that the traditional advice we have been given about managing anxiety can sometimes backfire, particularly for those of us who are over 60. The truth is, there are 3 incredibly simple techniques that can stop anxiety in its tracks within just a few minutes, and they are backed by decades of scientific research specifically focused on how our bodies and minds change as we age. These methods work differently than what you might have tried before, and they take into account the unique ways our nervous system responds to stress after 60. Hello there, and I am absolutely thrilled you decided to join me today because what I am about to share with you could genuinely change how you experience those moments of anxiety and worry that seem to pop up more frequently as we navigate our golden years. I want to be crystal clear from the start. This is not about adding more complicated routines to your day or learning complex meditation techniques. This is about empowerment. This is about giving you back control over those overwhelming feelings using methods that are so simple. You can use them while sitting in your favorite chair, waiting at the doctor's office, or even lying in bed at night when your mind starts racing. The best part? These techniques integrate seamlessly into the life you are already living. Let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed how your anxiety seems different now than it was when you were younger? Maybe it shows up as worry about your health, concern about family members, or even anxiety about changes happening in your neighborhood or the world around you. Or perhaps you have noticed that your body responds differently to stress now. Your heart might race a bit faster, or you might feel that knot in your stomach more intensely than you used to. Please share in the comments what triggers your anxiety most often. Because your experience matters. Today, I am going to walk you through 3 scientifically proven techniques that have been specifically tested on adults over 60. These are not generic stress management tips. These are targeted strategies that work with the natural changes in your nervous system, your breathing patterns, and your cognitive processing that come with maturity and wisdom. Each technique takes less than 5 minutes to learn and can be used immediately whenever anxiety strikes. The first technique might surprise you because it actually involves breathing, but not in the way you have been taught before. This is called the Modified 4-7-8 breathing technique, and it has been specifically adapted for adults over 60 based on research from the University of Arizona and Harvard Medical School. Now, I know what you might be thinking. You have tried breathing exercises before, and they did not work, or they made you feel dizzy, or they just seemed too complicated to remember when you were actually feeling anxious. The beauty of this modified version is that it accounts for the changes in lung capacity and breathing patterns that naturally occur as we age. Here is what happens in your body when you use this technique. When you extend your exhale longer than your inhale, you activate something called the parasympathetic nervous system. This is like flipping a switch that tells your body to move from fight or flight mode into rest and digest mode. This specific timing of 4-7-8 creates a rhythm that naturally slows your heart rate and releases tension in your muscles. This is particularly important for people over 60 because our nervous systems can become more reactive to stress over time. A study published in the Journal of Clinical Medicine found that adults over 60 who used this modified breathing technique experienced a 38% reduction in anxiety symptoms within just 2 weeks of regular practice. Here is exactly how to do it. Sit comfortably in your chair with your feet flat on the floor. Place one hand on your chest and one hand on your belly. Breathe in through your nose for 4 counts, but do not force it. If 4 feels too long, start with 3 counts and work your way up. Hold your breath gently for 7 counts. If this feels uncomfortable, start with 5 counts. Then exhale slowly through your mouth for 8 counts, making a soft whooshing sound if that feels natural. The key difference from traditional 4-7-8 breathing is that you should never strain or force any part of this process. Your breathing should feel gentle and natural. If you feel dizzy, simply return to normal breathing and try again later with shorter counts. Start by doing this just 3 times in a row, once or twice a day. You can gradually increase to 4 or 5 cycles as it becomes more comfortable. The beautiful thing about this technique is that it works whether you are dealing with sudden anxiety or trying to prevent it from building up throughout the day. 1 important note: if you have any respiratory conditions like chronic obstructive pulmonary disease or severe asthma, please check with your doctor before starting any new breathing exercises. But here is something even more powerful than breathing that most people never think to try when anxiety strikes. And it involves something you probably do every single day without even realizing its incredible potential for calming your mind. The second technique is called sensory anchoring, and it works by redirecting your anxious mind away from worrying thoughts and back into your physical body and immediate environment. This technique is incredibly powerful for people over 60 because it uses the wisdom and experience you have accumulated over the decades. You might be skeptical about this one because it seems almost too simple, but stick with me. When anxiety hits, your mind gets stuck in what psychologists call rumination loops. You start thinking about something worrying, which makes you feel more anxious, which makes you think even more worrying thoughts. It becomes a cycle that feeds on itself. Sensory anchoring breaks this cycle by engaging what neuroscientists call the default mode network in your brain. This is the network responsible for present moment awareness. When you deliberately focus on your senses, you interrupt the anxiety loop and give your nervous system a chance to reset. Research from Johns Hopkins University shows that adults over 60 who practice sensory grounding techniques experience significantly less anxiety and better emotional regulation than those who rely only on cognitive strategies. The reason this works so well as we age is that our sensory experiences become richer and more meaningful over time. You have decades of positive sensory memories stored in your brain, and this technique helps you access that calming database of experiences. Here is exactly how to use sensory anchoring when you feel anxiety starting to build. Start with what you can see. Look around and identify 5 things you can observe in detail. Not just, I see a lamp, but I see a brass lamp with a cream-colored shade that has a small dent near the bottom. Really study these objects as if you are seeing them for the first time. Next, identify 4 things you can physically feel. This might be the texture of your clothing against your skin, the temperature of the air on your face, the feeling of your feet in your shoes, or the sensation of your hands resting on your lap. Spend a few seconds really focusing on each physical sensation. Then identify 3 things you can hear. Maybe it is the hum of the refrigerator, birds chirping outside, or the sound of your own breathing. Try to listen to these sounds without judging them as good or bad, just noticing them as they are. Find 2 things you can smell. This might require taking a gentle breath in through your nose. You might notice the scent of your soap, coffee from the kitchen, or just the general smell of your home. Finally, if possible, identify 1 thing you can taste. This might be the lingering taste of your morning tea, or simply the neutral taste in your mouth. The entire process takes about 3 to 5 minutes, and by the time you finish, your anxiety will have significantly decreased. This works because you have essentially rewired your brain from anxiety mode back into awareness mode, What makes this particularly effective for people over 60 is that you can enhance it by connecting these sensory experiences to positive memories. When you notice the smell of coffee, you might briefly remember a pleasant morning with your spouse. When you feel the soft texture of your favorite sweater, you might recall when you first bought it. You can practice this technique anywhere. Sitting in a waiting room, lying in bed at night, or even walking around your home. The more you use it, the faster it works, because you are training your brain to shift out of anxiety mode more quickly. Now, while sensory anchoring is incredibly effective for managing anxiety as it is happening, there is one more technique that actually helps prevent anxiety from building up in the first place. And it involves something that might seem completely unrelated to mental health, but has profound effects on your emotional well-being. The third technique is called gentle micro-movement, and it is specifically designed for people who might have mobility limb